The wife overhears her husband and the model plotting on a late-night call. She vanishes the next morning, leaving behind her unlocked phone as the only clue. Her phone lit up on the kitchen island at 12:41 a.m., casting a blue square across the marble like a knock that didn't want witnesses. In the next room, Nora Mercer stood barefoot with the pantry door cracked open, listening to the man she loved, and the woman whose face smiled from downtown billboards discuss her as if she were a problem that could be managed. A glass rang against another, a low laugh, a soft, practiced voice. The call ended. Then, like fate testing, whether she'd pretend she hadn't heard it, the phone rang again. Twice. By sunrise, Nora was gone, and the only thing she left unlocked was the story of how everything broke. The lake wind pushed a cool breath through the Mercer house in Seattle, lifting the shears as if the night was exhaling secrets. Nora couldn't stop hearing the sentence that changed the shape of her body. "We need to get ahead of her." It had come from Isla Ree, a model whose cheekbones sold watches and perfume, and, more recently, the public fantasy that a billionaire's life was both effortless and morally uncomplicated. Caleb had whispered, "It's not what you think, Isa." Not Isla, Isa, the nickname that belonged to familiarity. Nora pressed her palm to the pantry shelf until the wood pressed back. She was 12 weeks pregnant, a quiet new moon in her belly, and the house felt like a museum curated to display a life she was losing. Polished kitchen, curated art, the leather chair Caleb loved and never sat in long enough to warm. A second call came. 2 tiny rings, like a child tugging a sleeve. Caleb's voice softened, the way it did when he talked investors through volatility. "We'll handle it," he said. Nora's heart emptied of illusion. Handle it. Manage her. She imagined herself as a talking point in a board meeting. PR exposure risk due to pregnancy. She imagined the headlines morphing into her name. She imagined the way her mother would say, "Nora, you always choose the complicated love," and how Nora would swallow, because truth always tastes like metal when it's new. She moved through the house on quiet feet, a choreography that felt both alien and memorized. In the bathroom, she opened her notes app and typed what she'd heard, not because she didn't trust her memory, but because she no longer trusted the man perched on the patio with his phone angled toward the lake's darkness. Then she placed her phone face up on the kitchen island, unlocked. One more truth, left like breadcrumbs. A folder of voice memos, 2 recordings of murmured, "We can't have a scandal," and a brief, damning mention of a clinic. She would not be the scandal to be managed. At 5:20 a.m., while the lake was a sheet of tarnished silver and Caleb showered, Nora shrugged into jeans and the soft grey sweater she wore on Tuesdays and grief days. She looked at the framed photo from their wedding, his hand on her waist, her smile like a vow, and felt the steady, fierce instinct of someone who had finally stepped out of a story that wasn't written for her. She slid her wedding ring onto the marble beside the phone. The circle of gold made a sound she would remember. She left without closing the door. She did not want the house to have the dignity of an ending. On Mercer Island, the streets were still. Nora drove a borrowed car, her cousin June's dusty green Subaru, traded a week ago, until the SUV gets its mirror fixed, and headed toward a motel whose name she only knew because the neon sign flickered when they passed it on summer nights. June would text at 7, when June always texted, "Coffee?" Nora would answer late. She had until then to become the kind of woman who disappeared not out of fear, but out of a strategy that made sense when love forgets what the body knows. By the time Caleb padded downstairs in his towel, the phone chimed on the island, lighting the words that would be his first clue. Voice memo. 2 rings. He touched the screen as if it could tell a kinder version of the truth. It refused. The house had never been so quiet. Even in the beginning, Nora had known that Caleb was a man whose gravity bent rooms. He started Arcadia home with an engineer's impatience and an artist's faith that design could make people behave better. The early days were ramen and code, then suddenly it was global, and his face was in airports, beside the word visionary. Nora taught English at a public high school. Her favorite class wrote letters to authors and to the versions of themselves they wanted to meet at 50. The imbalance wasn't money alone. It was attention. Caleb was a prism, 1,000 hands and questions aimed at his light. If she pressed him about the rare late-night absences, he turned contrite with an ease that felt practiced. It's different at this level, Nor. There's always a crisis. I'll be better. And he often was, for a week or a month. He'd make dinner, he'd listen with his eyes, he'd kiss her shoulder when he thought she was asleep. But power is a tide. It returned, stronger. Isla arrived on the Arcadia ad campaign like a weather front. Billboard, pale, with rain-dark hair and a gaze that made strangers stop walking. She was the brand ambassador, an elegant way of saying she made his world shinier. When Nora met Isla at a launch, Isla's smile had the generosity of a woman trained to make another woman comfortable. "You must be Nora," Isla said. He never stopped saying your name. It sounded like praise. Later, Nora sat in the bathroom and told herself it changed nothing, that the woman's perfume had filled the air when Caleb reached for her hand. By fall, the "we" in their marriage had started to mean logistics. IVF had cracked them. The doctor's voice had been careful. "Your case is hopeful, but time matters." And Caleb's schedule had broken appointments, like sticks pulled from a bundle. Nora learned to carry the weight in silence, because the alternative was asking for attention from a man who wanted to give it and didn't know how. When the test finally turned positive, she had planned an ordinary announcement, a small cake from a bakery that spelled "hello" in pink script. At dinner, he'd been late, then present, then late again. Nora had left the cake in the refrigerator, a secret she licked from a spoon at midnight. The next day he came home with a bouquet big enough to photograph. She smiled anyway. A new life deserves a parade, even if the marching band is one woman holding a spoon. Now, in the motel, the walls the color of old pears, Nora laid out the first 3 moves of a plan. She called June. She called Dr. Das, who had said, "If you ever feel unsafe in your relationship during pregnancy, here is my private number." She called one more person, a former student, Evelyn, now a journalist at the Pacific Ledger, whose emails spilled more compassion than most friendships. Nora told them only what they needed. "I'm safe. I'm leaving for a while. If anything happens, there's a folder on my phone." She didn't say that the phone was unlocked on Caleb's counter, that she was betting on his conscience to open it, and on his fear to understand what those 2 rings meant. The second ring was her life's learned wisdom. The first truth we hear, we try to ignore. The second one, we either obey or betray ourselves. Caleb listened to the recording twice, then a third time, because denial is an excellent editor. He recognized his own voice and hated how it sounded like someone who'd forgotten the difference between strategy and love. "We can't have a scandal," he'd said, meaning the feminist takedowns, the activist op-eds, the board members who'd already told him one personal misstep could tank the IPO. He had not said clinic. Isla had. But he had not objected fast enough, and only men who have never needed to say no in time tell themselves timing doesn't matter. He called Nora, straight to voicemail. He tracked her AirTag. She'd left it on the kitchen key hook, which felt like a reprimand. He texted Isla, "Do not call me." In reply, he received a heart emoji, which felt like a negotiation. By 8, the house was an exhibit in a crime he could not name. He found her ring. It was warmer than the marble, as if it remembered the heat of her hand. He closed his fist around it and felt suddenly 19, precarious, terrified of losing what couldn't be bought back. He called June. June answered with a woman's speed. "What did you do?" Caleb stared at the lake, stupidly. "I don't know," he said, with enough honesty to make it hurt. June's voice softened. "If she wanted police involved, they'd be on your porch. She wants time. Don't chase her." "I can give her anything," Caleb said, and knew as he spoke that this was the oldest lie of power. "You can give her what she asked for," June said. "Space. And if you want to be useful, look where she's pointing." He opened Nora's phone. The folder was unattractively titled, "Proof I Am Not Crazy." Inside, the audio, screenshots of Isla's texts, a photo of a business card with a name scrawled on the back, Victor Lapp, Seraph Partners. Victor, who had sniffed around Arcadia in the early days with the bland smile of a man who collects companies the way others collect ceramics. Caleb remembered turning him down for money that smelled like bleach. He followed another breadcrumb, an email draft addressed to Emmeline Javier with the subject, "If something happens to me." The draft contained a single sentence. 2 rings means listen twice. Below it, coordinates. A storage locker in a neighborhood whose name tripped a memory, where they'd once bought a crib they didn't get to use. A stranger can be dangerous, but so can a version of yourself who is suddenly not the main character. Caleb dressed. In the mirror, he looked like the villain of a story he did not choose. He put the ring in his pocket like a talisman. He did not call Isla. He did not call legal. He drove to a storage facility with the panic of a man who suspects that salvation might depend on how fast he can understand his wife. The locker door shuddered like a throat clearing. Inside, a banker's box labeled with Nora's secretary neatness, old letters, 2014, 2019, and beneath it, a slim envelope with the logo of a private clinic. He knew those logos now. Fertility clinics were their own brand of heartbreak, but the envelope held something else. Not medical records, but a printed copy of a non-disclosure agreement. Seraph Partners, Arcadia Home, and a signature line that bore a hand like his, and not his. The date was a month after their Series C, the month he'd started sleeping at the office. He ran his thumb over the paper where a signature would be. The line was blank. Relief hit him like a cruel joke. He had not signed. Did that absolve him? Of the intention? Of the willingness? Of the silence? The answer was not legal. It was moral. And it was not yes. Nora bought a burner phone at a drugstore that smelled like floor cleaner and unmade decisions. She checked into a long-term motel under her maiden name, Kendall, a syllable that tasted like high school, and stood in the sparse room, listening to the way appliances hum when you're alone. At 9, Dr. Das called her back. "I'm glad you reached me," the physician said, warmth wrapped around efficiency. "Stress hormones are not good for the pregnancy, but Nor is staying where you feel unsafe. We'll set up care near you." "Where are you?" "On my way to Bellingham," Nora lied reflexively, an old habit from a childhood where secrets brought safety. In truth, she didn't know where she'd go next. Flight used to be a metaphor. Now it was a plan. Dr. Das didn't press. "I'll text a list of clinics. Hydrate, eat protein, and Nora, choose the voice inside you that's kindest, not the one that's loudest." When the call ended, Nora cried. Not for betrayal. That sadness had burned clean in the night. She cried for the way a medical professional's gentleness can make a person feel seen, and for the way she had slowly disappeared from her own life. She opened her laptop and wrote a letter she didn't plan to send, addressed to the child she hoped would someday read it. You were the first truth that made me brave. I left because I wanted you to arrive in a world where no one uses the word manage about your existence. I left because sometimes a woman must teach love how to behave by stepping out of its reach. She ate a granola bar. She watched 2 housekeeping carts roll past her door like ships. She texted June 3 words: alive. Don't worry. She texted Emmeline a link to a cloud folder with a password. Twarings. At noon she drove north as far as Everett, then circled back toward a town whose main street sold fishing tackle and fireworks. She rented a room above a bakery that smelled like a grandmother's idea of heaven. The landlord was a widow named Deirdre, with a braid like rope and a belief in herbal tea. We host a knitting circle on Wednesdays, Deirdre said. You look like you knit. I look like I need the tea, Nora said, and tried not to catalogue exits the way her body had learned to do after last night. That afternoon, standing at the small sink, brushing her teeth, Nora looked up and saw a woman she recognized. Strong mouth, stubborn brow, eyes that had always been better at seeing other people than herself. She placed her hand over her abdomen and envied the calm heartbeat inside. We're going to be okay, she said. Saying it didn't make it true. Saying it made her responsible for making it true. The phone on the counter, new, anonymous, lit up. Unknown number. Twice. 2 small chimes that sounded almost like a private agreement. She let it ring out both times. Then a text appeared. It's Emmy. I have your note. How can I help? Nora typed. Listen twice before you publish once. If I disappear, give the evidence to a lawyer named Armin Mystery. He handled whistleblowers at the AG's office. She hesitated, then added, I need to know if Seraph Partners is circling Arcadia again. A bubble of dots. Then, yes, whisper that they've guaranteed a pre-IPO backstop, but people are scared to talk. Nora put the phone down and took 3 breaths the way her therapist had taught her. In hold, out. A plan needs hours and allies. She had both. She would survive this by being the woman she had been in classrooms, methodical, patient, and by trusting that truth, once set in motion, is a train that doesn't break for convenience. Isla Ree had learned long ago that the distance between survival and luxury is thinner than a camera lens. People projected onto her a life free of need. They did not understand how need arranges itself into softness, into yes, into careful smiles. Victor Lapp didn't call. He summoned. His office smelled like new money and old grudges. He's sentimental, Victor said, peering out at Elliott Bay as if it too took orders. He will break at the right pressure. Isla tapped her nails against a glass of water and pretended her hand didn't shake. I don't break people, she said. I pose. Victor's laugh was a blade. Your job is persuasion. You don't have to like the words. She had met Caleb at a charity gala where every donation came with a hashtag. He had been distant, then curious, then kind, in a way that felt dangerous to someone who'd grown up managing unkind men. He didn't try to own her. That had been new. He didn't try to save her. That had been better. He also didn't say no when Victor slid a proposal across a table that would tie Arcadia's future to Seraph's balance sheet. We'll manage the optics, Victor had told them both with a smile, clean as a surgical light. The public likes a love story. Isla hadn't understood, not at first, that she was a piece more than a person in Victor's game. But she understood now. I'm out after this, she told him. You said exposure, then independence. I want the independence. Victor waved one hand, the gesture of men who believe the future is their pet. Deliver what I asked for. What if he goes to the press? Isla asked. What if she does? Then we reposition, Victor said. Scandal is just a door. We walk through different ones depending on who follows. People don't care about facts. They care about narrative. Isla could script narrative in her sleep. But the last 36 hours had dislodged something. She'd seen the look on Caleb's face when she'd said, clinic, not because she wanted it. God no, she would never. But because Victor had made clear that fear moves men like Caleb faster than love. She hated herself for saying it. She hated that Nora would hear that word in her voice. When she left Victor's office, she did something dangerous. She texted Caleb, I'm sorry, and meant it. Then she texted Nora's phone, knowing it would be in the house, that he might read it. If I could take it back, I would. She considered adding, he will not stop at you. He will not stop at me. She did not add it. Some truths are invitations to violence. That evening, she went home to a high-rise, designed to make a person forget the ground. She washed off makeup until the mirror showed the girl who had once worked 3 jobs and slept on trains between photography tests. Jobs she couldn't afford to admit were paid in favors. She looked that girl in the eyes and said, we leave. Saying it made the plan audible. She packed a bag. Caleb found Armin Mystery in a beige office above a nail salon that smelled of acetone and fate. Armin wore a tie in a cheerful pattern that made clients relax. I could pretend I don't know who you are, he said. But that would be ridiculous. What did you bring me, Mr. Mercer? Caleb, he said, feeling suddenly like a boy asking a teacher for help with homework he'd been too proud to admit he didn't understand. He laid the papers on Armin's desk. The unsigned NDA, a series of emails with subject lines that glowed like warning sirens, the photo of Victor's card. Armin read without speaking for longer than made Caleb comfortable. Finally, Armin leaned back. You haven't committed a crime by contemplating one, he said. But the proximity matters. Your company's about to go public. If this looks like pay to quiet a liability, especially a pregnant one, it becomes both illegal and radioactive. I didn't know about the second meeting, Caleb said. I didn't... He stopped. The verbs were too convenient. Armin nodded at the phone on the desk. Your wife left you this, which means she believes there's enough here to threaten her safety. If that's true, the civil penalties are the least of your worries. A text pinged. June. She's safe. No, I won't say where. Fix your house. Caleb swallowed. What do I do? You decide whether you're protecting yourself, Armin said gently, or protecting the truth. He thought of Nora's ring, currently burning a hole in his pocket. He thought of the child whose existence he had converted into a risk model to make the thought manageable. He hated the man he'd become to survive success. I want to protect the truth, he said. He was surprised to hear the unembellished sentence. He didn't add timelines or caveats. Armin nodded. Then you get ahead by stepping behind. We go to the AG's office. You offer cooperation. You hand over everything, including the things you think exonerate you. And you accept that redemption is not a press release. It will cost you. It should. Caleb breathed like a man who'd been sprinting in place for months and finally stepped off the treadmill. Okay. Armin's gaze softened. Call your wife first. She deserves to hear it from you. He called. The call did not connect. He texted, I'm going to the AG. I'm naming Seraph. I'm telling them everything I said and almost did. I won't stop until it's safe for you to come home, or safe for you never to. Your choice. He expected silence. Instead, his phone rang. Twice. He answered on the second. Nora, he said, and tried to fit apology and gratitude into a single syllable. Her voice was tired, alert, unbroken. "Go," she said. "I'll send you a list. Names, dates. Listen twice. Speak once. Will you be safe?" "I am safe because I left," she said. "Don't make leaving a lesson I regret." She hung up. Caleb stood in Armand's doorway with a sudden, severe love for the woman who had taught his life how to tell the truth by refusing to be the lie that held it together. The press conference wasn't a spectacle. It was meticulous. A mid-level assistant attorney general who spoke like a math teacher. Documents on an easel, a recorder's light winking red. The story wasn't billionaire confesses so much as ambitious private equity firm attempted to tie financial control to personal compliance. Names were read, then redacted for ongoing investigation. Caleb's prepared statement was 4 sentences long. He did not mention Nora by name. He did not mention Isla. He kept the blame aimed correctly and wide. Online, the narrative tried to outrun the facts. Mercer dumps model to save marriage. Arcadia implodes. Pregnancy scandal before IPO. People wanted a romance or a disaster. Truth was a third thing. Slower, scarier. Emmeline Javier published a piece that refused sensationalism. A lesson in power, who gets managed when men are scared. It quoted a woman identified only as an educator who called leaving a vocabulary of boundaries. The piece trended without the usual fireworks. It moved like a tide. Women read it and forwarded it to sisters at 2 a.m. Isla left Seattle that night on a last-minute flight. At security, a hand touched her elbow. Not Victor. A woman with a badge. All business. "Ms. Rhee, we'd like to ask you a few questions." The tone made it clear that, for once, her story would require verbs other than pose. Victor, never one to trust the law to hand him a mirror, fled toward the kind of jurisdictions that treat money as a passport. His jet was grounded by a clerical error that did not feel clerical. He texted Caleb a single word: coward. Caleb put his phone face down and let the word sit with the others he'd earned. Nora watched the news from the small room above the bakery, with Deirdre's tea cooling beside the laptop. Her hands shook. Not fear, adrenaline, the body's way of celebrating and warning. She turned the volume down when pundits tried to translate her life into the binary of wife forgives or wife leaves. People like endings. She preferred engineering. June arrived with soup and the permission to eat it slowly. "He did it," June said. "He started," Nora said. "Finishing takes longer." They sat quiet long enough to hear the downstairs bell ring and the front door open and close twice in quick succession. 2 rings. Nora smiled despite herself. Life had a sense of humor. At midnight, her phone buzzed. Dr. Das. 12-week scan tomorrow. Quiet clinic, private entrance. No names in the waiting room. Nora typed, "Yes." She didn't add that the word felt like lifting a weight after weeks of refusing help. The strongest people she knew were the ones who had learned how to accept gentleness as a strategy, not a luxury. Power rarely retreats peacefully. 2 nights after the press conference, Nora left the clinic with a printout of a small, stubborn heartbeat and a bag of crackers. She walked toward the parking garage elevator, the air bright with disinfectant and rain. The garage was mostly empty, a few sedans, a single truck, the echo of her steps like someone following. She saw him a breath before he spoke. Not Victor, he'd be too careful, but a man with the weightlifter's shoulders and sideburns of an early 90s villain. "Ms. Kendall," he said, as if names were polite. "Mr. Lapp would like a word." Nora took a step back and used her teacher voice. "We're in public," the man smiled like a door closing. Public is a technicality. She had already palmed her keys like a weapon. She had already memorized where the security camera sat, its red light flickering like a small, furious star. "Then he can talk to me through council," she said, "or through the AG's office. They're very chatty." He moved closer. The moment elongated, one of those thin-boned seconds where futures multiply. She felt fear like a flare, and beneath it, anger like a clean flame. She raised her keys, and a second set of steps came fast, a voice cutting like a whistle. "Hey, Caleb." In jeans, no entourage, his breath loud enough to count. He wasn't supposed to know she'd be here, but he knew her doctor's name, and a clinic's reputation for quiet, and a husband's obligation to show up when the world's rules had become untrustworthy. The man looked from Nora to Caleb and made the little mental calculation men like him made, risk versus reward, and found the margin unpretty. He shrugged. "Tell your wife to answer her phone," he said, and slipped away with all the menace of a rumor. For a moment, the garage was only echo and breath, and Nora holding crackers like an anchor. Caleb didn't move closer. He had learned at least one thing. "Okay?" he asked. She nodded. "You shouldn't be here." "I won't be here long," he said, a sentence that was true in more ways than one. "I'm giving statements tomorrow. We found emails. Arman thinks it will hold." "You'll lose the IPO," she said. "Not to punish, but because facts belonged between them now, clean as a sheet." "I will lose a lot," he said. "I already did." He took a breath. "I'm not asking you for anything. I just wanted to see if you were okay, and to give you this." He set something on the concrete between them like an offering. A tiny knitted hat, grey as her sweater, with imperfect stitching that could have been done by a tired man learning how to use his hands for something other than signing. "I'm learning," he said, and she realized the hat wasn't for the baby now. It was practice. It was repentance that took the shape of humility, of time spent rather than money given. They stood there, two people who had loved each other badly and were trying not to, and she felt the slight shift that happens when what's broken admits it might become something else. Not the original, not shiny, but real. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. He nodded. "I'll go." He paused. "If you ever need me to show up before you call, I promise I won't. I've learned that lesson." "Good," she said. "Learn the ones that keep both of us safe." He left. She sat in the car and let herself cry into the little hat, not because she was weak, but because the kindness hurt in the exact place where she'd gone numb. 6 months later, the lake had a summer's patience. Arcadia Home delayed its IPO. The board removed Caleb as CEO, with a severance that made headlines and a cooperation clause that made prosecutors smile. Victor Lapp was indicted on counts that sounded like a foreign language stapled to a calculator. Isla Ree gave a quietly devastating interview in which she admitted what it cost to be beautiful in a market that treats women like currency. She didn't cry, and the country listened harder. Nora taught summer school by choice. The classroom smelled like dry erase markers and hope. Her belly arrived at the world before she did. Students asked questions big and small. How do you forgive a parent? How do you write a thesis? And she answered with the calm of someone who had made forgiveness a process and not a demand. Caleb texted once a week with updates he didn't expect replies to. "I turned over the last batch of emails. I'm starting a class in community mediation. Arman says the civil settlements will protect future whistleblowers." Sometimes she responded with a single word. "Good." Sometimes she sent the photo of the knitted hats he kept leaving on June's porch like a man making amends with yarn. When labor started on a Wednesday, June drove her to a hospital where the nurses' shoes squeaked like rubber ducks. Nora labored quietly. She had always done hard things like that. Hours later, she held a daughter whose mouth shaped the word O, the way newborns claim oxygen. She named her Wren, a bird that does not know it is small. Caleb waited in a hallway until June. Judge, jury, sister walked out and looked at him, the way one looks at a volunteer who cannot be trusted with the heaviest boxes yet. "She'll see you," June said. "You will sit. You will not speak for 30 seconds. Then you will speak only to Wren. Understood?" He understood more rules than that now. He washed his hands like a ritual and entered a room where time felt hand-stitched. Nora looked tired and holy in the way humans are when they make more humans. He sat. He didn't speak for 30 seconds. Then he spoke to Wren about the lake and knitted hats, and how he planned to be the kind of father who asks permission to hold his child, even when the answer is always yes. Wren slept like a decree. Nora watched him and felt the complicated thrum of love and caution. Redemption, she'd learned, isn't a door you step through once. It's a practice. Cups washed, rooms aired out, apologies landed, boundaries honored. She had forgiven him some things and not others. The rest would take time. "Do you want?" she began, then stopped, feeling the power of being able to offer or withhold. "I want what you want," he said, and for once it didn't sound like a performance. "Then start with Thursdays," she said. "Come at 4, bring dinner, leave by 8. No promises, no photographs. You and her and the quiet." He nodded, as if she had handed him a map and warned him the roads were narrow. "I'll be here." 2 weeks later, on a Thursday, he arrived at 4 with a casserole so earnest it made June laugh. He held Wren while Nora showered. He told Wren stories that had no heroes, only people doing better on page 3 than they did on page 1. He left at 8, with a promise unopened between his teeth. He didn't ask when he could come back. He said, "Thank you for trusting me with her," and walked out like a man who understood that love's grammar had changed. That night, Nora stood by the kitchen window of her new apartment, which was small and faced a tree that insisted on being green. She laid her phone on the counter, unlocked. It rang once, June, and then again, Emmeline, 2 soft chimes that had once been a warning. She smiled. She answered both calls, one after the other, listening twice before speaking once, and felt the world, the small, ordinary world she'd built from the wreckage, hold. She went to bed thinking of the first time Wren would wear the grey hat, and the last time she'd ever let someone tell her that the right kind of woman is the kind who can be managed. She slept with the window open, the lake and the street, and the breaths of the city making a lullaby that sounded like people learning. In the morning, she woke to sunlight on her pillow, and a text from Caleb that said nothing about love and everything about living. What size diapers? I bought 2 kinds, and both are wrong. She laughed. She wrote back. She went on. The phone did not ring twice. If this story moved you, if you've ever rebuilt a life from the rubble of what others tried to manage, I hope Nora and Wren's journey offered a hand to hold. Betrayal can rewrite your map. Power can try to name you. But resilience, truth, and the quiet work of showing up can reshape everything, slowly, honestly, and without spectacle. For anyone standing at a sink, deciding what to carry forward and what to set down, you're not alone, and you're allowed to choose the voice inside you that's kindest. If you'd like more grounded, emotionally rich stories like this, stories that honor women's strength and the complicated lives we live, please like this video, share it with a friend who needs it, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Your support helps bring more nuanced, healing stories into the world. Thank you for watching and for listening twice and then speaking your truth.
I'm standing in the middle of Ocean Drive, Miami, holding what's left of my dignity, a cardboard box full of my life from the art gallery I just got fired from. The sun's too bright for this kind of humiliation. My hair's sticking to my neck, and the expensive blazer I borrowed from a friend smells like stress, sweat, and regret. "Miss Dawson, it's not personal," my boss had said, lips pursed like she was holding back a yawn. "We just need someone with more connections." Right. Translation: someone with a trust fund and a last name people actually recognize. So now here I am, broke, furious, and one strong breeze away from throwing this box into oncoming traffic. I mutter to myself, maybe I'll just walk into the ocean. Make it a statement piece. Performance art. The drowning of a broke girl. The gods of irony must be drunk today, because just as I step off the curb, a silver Maserati screeches to a stop inches from me. My box flies, papers and pens raining like confetti over the hood. I slap my hands against the car and yell, "Are you insane?" Then I see him through the windshield. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, top buttons undone like he's allergic to effort. His skin's sun-bronzed, his jawline sharp enough to draw blood, and his eyes, dark, steady, the kind that could make a lie sound like gospel. He stares at me like he's deciding whether to apologize or buy the entire street so he doesn't have to deal with me again. He gets out of the car, and wow, he's tall. Dangerous in that quiet, confident way that screams money and menace. "Are you hurt?" His voice is low, with the faintest trace of something foreign. Italian, maybe? The vowels roll too smoothly to be local. "Just my pride," I snap, grabbing my things. "But thanks for the adrenaline rush. Cheaper than therapy." He studies me, expression unreadable. "You stepped in front of my car." I was crossing the street. Against the light. I glare at him. "You sound like a cop." His mouth twitches, almost a smile. "You don't look like someone who follows rules." "Great observation, Sherlock. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go be unemployed somewhere else." I scoop my mess into the box and start walking. He watches me for a moment, then says, "You dropped this." I turn, expecting a paper. He's holding my sketchbook, the one thing I actually care about. The leather cover's scuffed, and a few loose sketches of faces hang from it. I freeze, because one of them is a charcoal portrait I drew of a man who looks a lot like him. He notices. Of course he does. "Did you draw this?" he asks quietly, flipping the page. "Yes," I say, wary. "It's not you if that's what you're thinking. I just draw people I see in my head." "Interesting," he says, and something in his tone sharpens. "People you see in your head." Before I can snatch it back, he closes the sketchbook and hands it to me carefully, almost reverently. "You should be more careful walking around. Miami isn't kind to the desperate." "I'm not desperate," I lie. His eyes narrow slightly. "Sure you're not." He walks back to his car, gets in, and drives off, the sound of the engine purring like an expensive threat. I exhale, muttering, "What an ass. A gorgeous, possibly criminal ass." By the time I reach my apartment, tiny, peeling walls, no AC. The Florida heat feels like punishment. My landlord's note is taped to the door. Final notice in all caps. Perfect. I throw the box down and slump against the wall. I've got $68 in my bank account, no job, and a week before I'm officially homeless. The next morning, I'm sitting on a beach bench sketching tourists when a black SUV pulls up in front of me. I think it's a coincidence until the same man steps out, the Miami sun catching on his watch. "You again?" I blurt. "Are you stalking me, or is this just the world's worst meet cute?" He ignores the jab. "You didn't tell me your name yesterday." "Maybe because I didn't plan on ever seeing you again." He smirks. "Yet here we are." "Here you are," I correct. "I'm just trying to mind my business." He tilts his head. "You're the one sketching strangers on a public beach." That's not exactly subtle. I shove my sketch pad into my bag. "You got a point, or are you just here to critique my art again?" He studies me for a beat, then says, "Come with me." I laugh. "Yeah, that's not creepy at all." He slips on a pair of sunglasses. You said you're not desperate. So prove it. Say no. My stomach knots, because he looks like the kind of man used to hearing yes. And the way he says prove it feels like a dare. Where exactly would I be going? I ask. Lunch, he says simply. Someplace with shade. I hesitate, but the mention of food makes my pride wobble. He notices. I'll take that as a yes, he says, gesturing to the car. Inside, the SUV smells like leather and money. The driver's silent, and the air conditioning feels like heaven. So, I say, crossing my arms, you kidnap all broke artists, or am I special? You ran in front of my car, he says dryly. Call it a follow-up wellness check. We drive to a glass-front restaurant overlooking the marina. It's the kind of place that doesn't list prices on the menu. He orders for both of us, some seafood thing I can't pronounce, and sits back, watching me like I'm another puzzle to solve. Finally, I ask, so what's your deal? You some rich guy with a savior complex? Rich, yes, he says, sipping his water. Savior complex, no. I just don't like seeing talent wasted. Talent? He nods toward my bag. Your drawings. You have an eye. The faces you sketch, they're alive. Like you've met them before. My throat tightens. Maybe I have. He leans forward slightly. Your name? Riley. He repeats it, slow, like he's testing the weight of it. Riley Dawson. And you are? Adrian Costa. The name clicks somewhere in my brain. I've heard it before. Whispers in headlines, stories about businesses he runs. The kind of name you don't say too loudly if you value your kneecaps. I swallow. Costa, as in, yes. He doesn't elaborate. Doesn't need to. So, Mafia Don, I say lightly. What's your real motive? You feel bad for almost running me over? He smiles faintly. No, you remind me of someone. The air between us shifts. My pulse stumbles. Someone you know? Someone I lost. He says it so simply, like the sun took something from him and never gave it back. I look away, unsure what to do with that. Don't flatter yourself, I mumble. I'm sure she was more put together than me. She was, he says, tone unreadable. But she had the same eyes, the same way of pretending she's fine when she isn't. I should get up. I should leave. But instead, I sit there, trapped between curiosity and something that feels dangerously like empathy. When the check comes, he doesn't look at it, just says, "You need a job." I'm fine. He laughs once, quiet and sharp. You're not. I'm offering work. I'm not cleaning your cars. Good, he says. They're already clean. You'll sketch for me. I'll pay well. I blink. Sketch what? Your enemies? He doesn't answer. Just stands, buttoning his shirt cuff. Come by the Costa estate tomorrow. Noon. Tell security I invited you. And then he leaves. Sunlight glinting off the glass door as if the universe's favorite joke is how I just got recruited by a man who could probably buy the moon. I sit there, staring after him, muttering to myself, what the hell did I just agree to? Somewhere deep down, though, a spark of something I haven't felt in months flickers to life. Hope or danger, I can't tell which. Either way, tomorrow at noon I'm going. The Costa estate looks like a mirage sitting on the edge of Biscayne Bay. Glass, stone, and sunlight stitched together like something too expensive to exist. I stand at the front gate in my thrift store sandals, staring up at the kind of mansion that probably has its own zip code. The guard eyes me through the tinted booth. Name? Riley Dawson, I say. Mr. Costa's expecting me. He checks something on a tablet, then presses a button. The iron gates slide open with a low hum. The driveway alone could host a marathon. By the time I reach the front door, I'm sweating through my only decent blouse. A maid in crisp white linen opens the door and says something polite in Spanish, before guiding me through sunlit hallways, lined with art that probably costs more than my student debt. Adrian's waiting on the terrace, sleeves rolled up again, black shirt catching the light like sin. He's barefoot, sitting on a white lounger with a laptop and a phone beside him. There's a glass of something pale gold. Not whiskey, maybe white wine, which somehow feels more dangerous. Riley, he says without looking up. You came. Yeah, well, I figured if I'm gonna make bad life choices, they might as well come with an ocean view. He finally looks at me, that flicker of amusement back in his eyes. You have a very specific kind of courage. Translation: stupidity. Both can be useful, he says, standing. Come, I'll show you what I want. He leads me inside to a sun-drenched studio with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the sea. Canvas boards, pencils, and expensive art supplies are already set up. This used to belong to someone, he says quietly. Let me guess. The woman I remind you of. He doesn't answer, which tells me I'm right. I want portraits, he says. People I tell you about. You'll draw them how I describe them. Like a police sketch artist for the rich and morally questionable. He smiles faintly. If that helps you sleep at night. I drop my bag and pick up a pencil. All right, boss man. Who's first? He hesitates, then sits across from me, elbows on his knees. Her name was Isabella. The way he says it, low, deliberate, makes me pause. I start sketching anyway, letting his words shape her features. She had light eyes. Not blue, more green when she laughed, and hair down to here. He gestures past his shoulders. She talked with her hands. Couldn't sit still. As he talks, I sketch, shading, smudging, letting the image come alive. It's eerie how easy it feels, like I already know her. When I'm done, I turn the page around. His expression doesn't change, but his hand clenches slightly. That's her, he says softly. Did she work for you? She loved me, he says simply. And then she died because of me. The words hang heavy in the bright room. Outside, the sunlight keeps pouring in like nothing tragic ever happened here. I swallow, setting the pencil down. So that's what this is. A guilt project. Call it whatever you want, he says. But you'll stay until it's finished. Stay? He shrugs. There are guest rooms. The job pays better than any gallery in this city, unless you'd rather go back to the beach benches. He's right. I'm too broke to argue, too intrigued to walk away. So I stay. Days blur into a rhythm. Coffee on the terrace, sketching in the studio, sarcastic comments I pretend aren't flirty, lunches where he actually laughs at my jokes. The sunlight in this house never feels warm. It's sharp, reflecting off marble, cutting through the lies we both tell ourselves. Adrian's empire hums quietly in the background. Men in suits come and go, talking in low voices. I catch words like shipments and territory, but no one explains. I'm not supposed to ask. Still, he treats me like someone with a mind, not a pet. We argue, we tease. We avoid whatever's burning between us. One afternoon, we're by the pool. He's on a phone call, pacing shirtless, the sun carving every line of muscle into definition. I try to focus on my sketch pad, but my brain refuses to cooperate. When he hangs up, I say, You know, for a guy who supposedly runs half of Miami, you really don't wear enough clothing. He smirks. You're distracted. By your arrogance, yes. Liar. Wow, I mutter. Your ego could power the city grid. He steps closer, crouching so we're eye level. You keep saying that like you're not the one staring. I shove my sunglasses up. Maybe I'm just studying anatomy for my art. He laughs, a low, real sound that breaks through his usual restraint. You remind me more of her every day. Isabella? He nods. But not because you look like her. It's the way you argue, the way you won't let me control the narrative. Yeah, that's kind of my thing, I say lightly, though my chest tightens. He stands again, looking out over the pool. She was the only person who didn't treat me like I was dangerous. You are dangerous, I say. You just hide it behind manners. He glances back at me, sunlight slicing across his face. And you hide behind sarcasm, touché. The next morning, everything shifts. I wake to the sound of shouting. Outside my window, 2 of Adrian's men are unloading boxes from a van. One of them looks pale, jittery. Adrian storms out, voice sharp as glass. Where's the rest of it? He demands. The man stammers. We were intercepted. Half the shipment's gone. By who? Torres's crew. Adrian's expression doesn't change, but the air does. Even from the window I feel it. That cold, quiet rage that makes people disappear. After a tense pause, he says, Get everyone ready. No one touches my docks without permission. When he walks back toward the house, I pretend to be sketching. He notices anyway. You heard, he says. Hard not to, I admit. Your morning meetings sound a lot like death threats. He sighs. This isn't your concern. Too late. I live here, remember? He looks at me, jaw tight. You shouldn't. That stings more than it should. You want me gone? No, he says quietly. I want you safe. Later, he takes me for a drive, top down, wind in my hair, city flashing by like a movie reel. We stop at a small marina where sunlight hits the water in shards of silver. He sits on the hood, lighting a cigar he barely smokes. You ever think about leaving Miami? Constantly, I say. But leaving costs money I don't have. You could, he says. Start fresh, somewhere no one knows your name. I eye him. That sounds like something people say before they disappear someone. He laughs once, shaking his head. You really have no filter. Occupational hazard, I say. Artists say what they see. He looks at me for a long time, then says, if anything happens, you go. You don't wait for me. Adrian, he holds up a hand. Promise me. I should refuse. I should tell him I'm not part of this world. But the truth is, somewhere between his half-smiles and the way he looks at me like I'm a person and not a project, I've already stepped inside it. Fine, I say, but only because you're bossy. Smart girl, he murmurs, flicking the cigar into the water. We drive back in silence, the sunlight mercilessly bright. That evening, I'm in the studio when the door slams open. One of his men, Leo, I think, bursts in. Riley, you need to get downstairs, now. What's going on? He doesn't answer, just grabs my arm and pulls me toward the terrace. Adrian's there, phone in hand, expression carved from stone. Torres sent a message, Leo says. Adrian hands me the phone. A picture fills the screen, my sketch of Isabella, torn, burned around the edges. My stomach drops. How the hell did they get that? Adrian's voice is low, dangerous. Someone in this house betrayed me. I stare at him, realization dawning. You think it's me? He meets my eyes. I don't want to. I feel heat rise in my chest. Anger, hurt, disbelief. I drew her because you told me to. You think I'd risk my life for some gang war I don't even understand? He takes a step closer. Then tell me how they knew her face. I don't know, I shout. Maybe because you talk about her like she's a ghost that never left. The words hang between us, electric and raw. He stares at me, something breaking behind his calm facade. Then he says softly, you really do remind me of her. And just like that, I realize how much danger I'm in. Not because of Torres, but because I've become something he can't afford to lose again. The sun floods the terrace, bright and blinding. Adrian turns away, voice rough. Until I find out who's responsible, you don't leave this house. I cross my arms. You can't just lock me up. He looks over his shoulder, eyes dark. Watch me. That's the moment everything shifts. When my strange little lifeline of sunlight, sketches, and sarcastic lunches turns into a gilded cage. And for the first time, I wonder if surviving him might be harder than surviving poverty. The next morning, I wake up to silence. No voices, no footsteps, no engines humming on the driveway. The Costa estate feels hollow, like the sunlight forgot to touch it. I step out of my room and find a man stationed outside my door. Not Leo. Someone new, built like a refrigerator with eyes. Mr. Costa said you stay inside, he says. Yeah, well, Mr. Costa also said good morning yesterday, and that didn't come with handcuffs. He doesn't react. I take a step closer. Move, or I'll start screaming about workplace harassment in front of the gardeners. That gets a twitch. He sighs, mutters something in Spanish, and lets me pass. Outside, the terrace looks exactly the same. White marble, turquoise pool, the Miami skyline glittering in the distance. Everything too bright for how wrong it feels. Adrian's standing by the railing, phone in hand, jaw set. He's wearing a crisp white shirt this time, sleeves rolled up, sunlight spilling through his hair. I march straight up to him. You want to explain why I suddenly have a personal prison guard? He looks up slowly, the kind of look that stops words in your throat, because someone wants you dead. I blink. Okay, you're gonna need to start that sentence over. Torres sent a warning, he says flatly. You're leverage now. Leverage for what? I don't even know who these people are. That's the point, he says. They think you're important to me. I cross my arms. And are you going to tell me they're wrong? He doesn't answer, which is, of course, an answer. Unbelievable, I mutter. I came here to draw faces, not dodge bullets. I'll handle it, he says. I bet that's what you said before Isabella died. He freezes, shoulders tightening. I immediately regret it, but the damage is done. He turns to me, voice low. You think I don't wake up every morning seeing her face? You think this, he gestures around, is about you? You were supposed to be safe. That's all. Then maybe stop making decisions for people who didn't ask for your protection, I snap, because it feels a lot like control. He exhales slowly, eyes dark and tired. You're not going anywhere until this is over. I shake my head, backing away. You don't get to decide that. He watches me, jaw tight, then says quietly, then run. If that's what you want, go, but don't expect me to let you die. It's the closest thing to a confession he's capable of. By noon, I've had enough. I grab my sketchbook, shove it into a tote bag, and slip out through the garden path that leads toward the beach. The security guy's gone, probably following orders somewhere else. The sand's hot under my feet, the air heavy with salt and sun. I tell myself I'll make it as far as downtown, maybe find a bus, disappear for a while. Start over. Then I hear it. Tires on gravel. I turn. A black SUV is tearing down the path behind me. I start running. The driver's window rolls down and I see a flash of a gun. I don't scream. I dive into the dunes, sand filling my shoes, my lungs, my everything. Then, another sound. An engine roaring from the opposite direction. Adrian's Maserati. He swerves between me and the SUV, sunlight bouncing off chrome. Shots crack through the air, loud, metallic, wrong for such a beautiful day. The SUV skids, then speeds off toward the road. Adrian slams his door open, running toward me. Riley! I sit up, shaking, hands trembling. What the hell was that? He kneels beside me, scanning me for injuries. You weren't supposed to leave. I noticed. My voice cracks. You think this proves your point? He cups the back of my neck, forcing me to look at him. It proves you're not safe without me. Maybe I'm not safe with you, I whisper. His jaw tightens, but he doesn't argue. Instead, he pulls me up, brushing sand off my arm. Come on. We drive back to the estate in silence, the wind whipping through the car, the Miami sun a cruel spotlight on our mess. When we get there, Leo's waiting with bad news written all over his face. They hit the North Dock, 2 of ours down. Adrian's expression goes still. And Torres? Gone before we got there. But he left this. Leo hands him a photo. The portrait I drew of Isabella, printed and folded. On the back, scrawled in red ink, she looks just like her. My stomach twists. He looks at me, realization dawning. He knows. That's why he's after you. He thinks that I'm her replacement, I say quietly, or her ghost. Adrian's eyes flicker. Guilt, fury, something darker. This is my fault. Yeah, I say. It is. For once, he doesn't argue. By the next day, he's a different man. Every call is sharp, every order colder. The guards triple. The house turns into a fortress made of glass and sunlight. I hide in the studio, trying to draw but ending up staring at the blank paper. Every pencil line looks like a trap. When the door opens, I don't look up. If you're here to lecture me, I already hate the ending. He steps closer, voice softer than I expect. You don't deserve this. Neither did she, I say. He sits across from me, elbows on his knees, sunlight catching the edge of his watch. You were supposed to be a reminder, not a punishment. I glance up. Then why do I feel like both? He leans back, eyes closing for a moment. Because you made me remember what it felt like to want something again. I swallow hard. And what do you want now? He opens his eyes, meets mine. For you to live. The way he says it, steady, absolute, makes my chest ache. Adrian, pack your things, he says. There's a plane waiting. What? You're leaving Miami. I have people who'll keep you off the radar until this is over. No. He looks at me stunned. No? You send me away, you'll go after Torres yourself. And then what? You end up like Isabella. He stands, voice rising. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the second you pulled me into your world. He stares at me, the air between us thick. You think I can let you die? I think you already lost one woman because of your pride, I shoot back. Don't make it 2. For a long moment he says nothing. Then, slowly, something cracks in his expression. All right, he says. We end it. Together. 2 hours later, we're standing in a sun-bleached marina. His men are scattered around pretending to be tourists. The ocean's calm, deceptively peaceful. Torres shows up like he's walking into a business meeting. Tan suit, smug grin, flanked by bodyguards. Costa, he says. You brought company. She's prettier than the last one. Adrian's entire body goes still. You touch her and I'll end you. Torres laughs. I don't need to touch her. You already ruined her by keeping her close. Then say what you came to say, Adrian snaps. Simple, Torres says. You hand over the West Docks. You get to keep your empire. And the girl. I step forward before I can stop myself. You talk about me like I'm furniture. Torres's grin falters. Cute. She's got fire. Adrian moves before anyone breathes. Grabs Torres by the collar, slams him against a post. You think you can threaten what's mine? Torres wheezes, smirking. Yours? She's a ghost with a new name. You always pick the ones that remind you of her. Adrian's eyes flicker. For a second I think he'll do it. Snap the man's neck in broad daylight. But then he lets go. Steps back. No, Adrian says quietly. You don't get to turn my grief into leverage. He turns to me. Get in the car. Not without you, I say. Torres laughs again. You think he's walking away from this? Adrian looks at me, calm, final. Someone has to. And then chaos. Shouting, movement, the crack of a gunshot. The sound echoes off the water like thunder. Torres stumbles, clutching his arm. His men scatter. Adrian's team moves in, fast and controlled. Within seconds, it's over. Adrian stands in the sunlight, gun still in hand, chest heaving. His white shirt streaked with dirt, his jaw set. I run to him. You okay? He nods once. It's done. You sure? He looks out at the water, the sun glaring off the surface. As sure as I'll ever be. 2 days later, I'm sitting by the pool, sketchbook open on my lap. The house is quiet again, too quiet. Adrian walks out, freshly showered, black shirt half unbuttoned. He looks human for the first time in weeks. Thought you'd be gone by now, he says. I was thinking about it, I admit. Then I realized I kind of like the view. He smirks faintly. Which one? The ocean or me? Depends on which one ruins my peace more. He sits beside me, stealing my pencil. Guess you'll have to live in chaos then. Guess so. We sit there, the air humming with everything that's happened and everything we'll never say out loud. The sunlight glitters across the water, too bright for all the shadows it hides. I look at him, the man who nearly ran me over, then refused to let me fall apart. I'm still broke, you know, I say. Your job offer technically never ended. He leans back, eyes closed. You're fired, I grin. Good. I was terrible at following orders anyway. For the first time he laughs, the real kind, unguarded and sunlit. And for one suspended golden moment, I forget about everything except the sound of it. Maybe this isn't a fairy tale. Maybe it's something messier. Survival, redemption, sunlight burning through grief. But it's real, and as he reaches over, brushing a stray curl from my face, I think maybe that's enough. If you love this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. Tell us which moment hit you hardest. Your support keeps more stories like this coming.